There's one technique that is a guaranteed, surefire way to know if your instructor doesn't know how to fight. And that's if he's teaching you the Stomp Kick. If you made it past the intro and you're not rage dumping down in the comment section, congrats. Because in this case, I'm actually lying to you. I happen to love the Stomp Kick. There's no nuance to that statement. I think it's a very effective, very pragmatic self-defense technique. But, like with every other technique in martial arts, I think there's a very specific time and a very specific use for the Stomp Kick. So in this video, I'm gonna go over how to do the traditional Stomp Kick, a couple variations of it, and when exactly is the best time to use it. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure to subscribe and you have notifications turned on, and let's get started. So the Stomp Kick, as I learned it, is very similar to the traditional front kick or the Thai teep kick, but it's used a little bit differently. Because whereas those kicks are more of a snapping motion, meaning you're attacking and retracting, the Stomp Kick is meant to push through your opponent. So you can think about it like this. The teep or the push kick is kind of like a jab, or even like a good cross. It's meant to go from position 1 to 2 and right back where it came from. It's not necessarily trying to knock someone out. Instead, what it's trying to do is just feel out your opponent and yes, make them hurt, but not drop them down. The Stomp Kick is kind of more like the untrained overhand. I'm gonna follow behind my strike. I'm putting all my weight into this strike. Now, the goal might be to send someone flying across the planet, and if you can do that, great. But the way that I've mostly been trained to use it, and the way that I see most people using it, is that they use this leg to cover distance to come into clinching. Now, what makes the Stomp Kick different from a push kick is where your knee starts from. For me, the way I teach the front or the push kick, whichever you prefer, is that the knee has to be parallel or perpendicular, I'm not super good at geometry, parallel to the ground. From here, I push to the butt and extend at the hip. With the Stomp Kick, I now bring my knee closer to my chest. As much as I can get my knee up, as much as I can push with my heel, that's a Stomp Kick. So it's a small difference, but it's an important difference. The goal is to put as much of your mass into your ass so you can push your opponent down to the grass. So the way that I learned to throw the Stomp Kick, the first way that I learned to throw it, is with the toe up, hitting through the heel. But if you come from more of a Wing Chun, Jeet-Kune-Do, or even John Jones style of training, you might be more familiar with the toes out, oblique style kick. And that's different, but not really all that different. Really what you're doing is allowing yourself to hit more with the heel in a more natural alignment for the hip. If you can't bring your hip all the way up to here, turning your foot out makes it a little bit easier for you. This makes it a much more natural way to move your body. And if you're targeting low to the legs, which we'll get into in a minute, you might find that even easier than stomping with the toe up. But ultimately, it's just a different tool in the arsenal. But there's a third way to throw the Stomp Kick that's really more of my flavor of Stomp Kick, that being the side kick. Now, if we have the 12 o'clock version of it and the 2 or 3 o'clock version, the side kick you can think about as the 9 o'clock version. Meaning my foot is gonna turn all the way in the opposite direction. Just like with the traditional Taekwondo side kick, I let my body whip to the side and then push out through the leg. The difference is, when you teach the traditional side kick, the goal is again to push out and return back where you came from. Whereas with this version of it, I wanna follow behind my kick. And just like I was saying earlier, these kicks are really better served going to the legs. And if I'm in a long range, I can use my side low kick Stomp Kick to cover distance and get my opponent down to the ground, take him to a clinch, take him to a choke, whatever. Stomp Kicks are the grappler's best friend. Because yes, while they're very easy to read, and we're gonna talk about that later, they're a great way to cover distance and get into the clinching range. You don't have to be super good at striking to throw a devastating Stomp Kick. Not to interrupt the video, but I wanna talk to you guys real quick about today's sponsor, FloSports. If you're a fan of this channel, I have to assume you're also a fan of combat sports, as well as stuff like weightlifting, CrossFit, maybe even gymnastics. And if you want to stream those events as they happen live, you gotta get yourself FloSports. Guys, I cannot recommend this company enough. I'm constantly on there watching all kinds of fun streams, and I recommend you do the same. If you want to sign up for FloSports, as well as save a couple bucks and help the channel grow, click on the description down there at the bottom. There you'll find my affiliate link for FloSports.tv. Anyway, back to the show. People, Stomp Kicks are not nice. I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that they're too dangerous to use in sparring, because the fact is, I've used them, I've had them used on me, and I've seen them done thousands of times in sparring. But nobody ever likes when it happens. If you're real serious about using your Stomp Kicks, you'll be here boxing your opponent, and then boom, throw to the leg, and all of a sudden he hits the ground. Maybe he tweaks a knee, maybe he tweaks an ankle, or maybe it just hurts a lot. It's a great way to lose all of your friends. Conversely, if you don't want to hurt your friends, you can also be here, throw a stomp kick and push yourself away because you don't put anything into the strike. Unlike throwing, let's say, a roundhouse kick or even the teep kick, there's kind of no middle ground to make a stomp kick effective. Either you go all the way for it and you risk possibly crippling somebody, or you cheat it and don't really do anything with it. And of course, there's always the risk that you throw the kick, miss, and oh shit, now I'm in front of him. So I'm not saying they're ineffective, but I am saying that if you try to make them less dangerous or you make them too dangerous, they're not a really fun thing to use in sparring. But I'm not saying you can't use them in sparring. I'm saying that's why you don't see them in sparring. So I can throw, let's say from a middle range, a teep, roundhouse kick, maybe the other side roundhouse kick, and then pull myself away. Now he knows my legs are dangerous, but I can't necessarily land my hands. And I'll throw this stomp kick to get his attention, then follow up with my punches. It's a great way to distract someone so that you're free to throw your boxing or your clinching or whatever you want. The best thing the stomp kick has going for it is that it has such a low threshold to get good at. I can get people throwing stomp kicks within a day or at most a week. If we're talking about widespread self-defense, personal protection training, I think the stomp kick is one of the best options. This is a very long weapon. Even me, standing at a very proud 5'5", I can cover a lot of distance by exploding through my hip straight at my opponent. So if he thinks I'm too far away to hit him, surprise, all of a sudden I'm in the close range. Same token, like I said earlier, these stomp kicks are best targeted towards the lower center of the body. Anywhere below the solar plexus and above the ankle is a good place to target the stomp kick. Yes, you can totally throw this towards someone's head and have fun if that's what you want to do, but if you don't necessarily have the mobility for that, or you're dealing with someone who has a very tight guard, maybe you put the stomp kick on the lower belly. However, this is a quick side tangent, because this isn't a snapping kick like a roundhouse kick, and you're hitting with the entirety of your foot, if someone has a good tight guard and you can get your leg up high enough, feel free to push them away with the stomp kick. Whether we're talking about 12 o'clock kick, the oblique kick, or the side stomp kick, this is a great way for a grappler or anybody to get into the close range. Now, we saw this being very effective for the Gracies back in the early 90s when people weren't super sure of how mixed martial arts style combat was actually meant to work. But as athletes got more comfortable with more advanced styles of striking and grappling, all of a sudden we didn't see that working quite as much. But now here's something to think about. The advanced athletes in the UFC, in ONE, whatever, is not necessarily representative of the regular attacker or fighter out on the street. Meaning the stuff that worked back in the early days of the UFC on people who were aggressive and decent at fighting but not experts at fighting is the stuff that will most likely work for you now if we're talking about an untrained fighter. Now look guys, I've said countless times on this channel that I believe training for the lowest common denominator is at best risky, at worst deadly. Because you don't know what your hypothetical attacker has actually done before. You don't know that they haven't been to their boxing class. You don't know that they haven't been to judo. You don't know that they haven't assaulted somebody every single night for the last 10 years of their life. Even if someone has had no formal training, if they're used to violence, if they know how to inflict and deal with violence, they're gonna be good at it. So assuming that your attacker has no idea what they're doing is, like I said, very, very risky. However, that doesn't mean there aren't techniques that are better served for the untrained, as in not formally trained attacker, versus the trained formal attacker. Yes, if I'm in the ring with somebody, I'm definitely gonna get in my stance and move and feel them out before I commit to a power strike. But if I'm dealing with a street fight or an assault, I don't necessarily have that kind of time. If they're good at violence but not trained in violence, there are tricks and techniques and strategies you can use that don't necessarily work on the opponent in the ring. Again, it's about knowing your arena. Whether we're talking about the ring or the cage or the street or the bedroom or the backyard, you have to know the rules of engagement and how things are going to untangle in that arena. There's a lot of carryover. Things are very similar, but they're also very different. Going back to the stomp kick, that won't necessarily work in your gym. That won't necessarily work in competition, but I can almost guarantee you it will work on someone who doesn't know how the tit for tat of fighting actually works. But anyways, you guys, that was my rant on the stomp kick. I think it's useful. I think we should spend more time on it in self-defense and honestly more time on it in combat sports. But I do think we have to understand the context for when to use that. All that being said, you guys, this has been Rob from Combat Self-Defense. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned something. If you did, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to help the channel grow, do me a favor and open up the description box down there at the bottom. There you'll find a whole bunch of links and codes to Combat Corner, which provides some of the best gear on the planet, as well as FloSports, so you can watch some of the best combat sports on the planet. As always, you guys, this has been Rob from Combat Self-Defense. I want to thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for the hard work get to be done, and I'll see you next time. Peace out!